I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Kate Zwaard, Director of Digital Strategy at the Library of Congress.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel incredibly honored to be invited to be your keynote speaker here today, and thank you to everybody who helped organize my trip. I was going to start with a joke about libraries, but I have about 60 slides to get through, so I think we'll save that to the end, and hopefully we can make it. My name is Kate Zwaard. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy at the Library of Congress, and I'm here to talk to you today about some of the work we've been doing, and also to invite you to think about ways that we might partner a little bit more closely together. But first, a little bit about me. I am not actually a librarian. I'm a software developer, as you just heard, that has kind of gone native. How many librarians are in the room, or people who work for libraries? Hello, friends. So this is a quote from Henrietta Avram, who is the founder of the MARC encoding standard that we use to transmit bibliographic information from different institutions. So I've been in libraries for a long time, and I've really fallen in love. And I think that it's never been a better time to be in libraries. The opportunities are so incredible, and it's just a ton of fun. So with that, I do want to tell you a little bit more about the Library of Congress. This is our mission statement: to engage, inspire, and inform Congress, which is our legislative body, and the American people with a universal and enduring source of knowledge and creativity. And I think for the purposes of our conversation, the important word in that statement right now is universal. So a ton of what we collect is actually in multiple languages. So the idea is that we're collecting material that's useful, that describes lived experiences of Americans, but also people around the world, which I hope entices you to think about ways we might partner more closely together. So to tempt you with some treasures, I'm going to talk a little bit more about our collections. So the Library of Congress is the largest library that has ever existed on planet Earth, and possibly the solar system. I don't have all the data, but it's a good bet, I think. So we don't have all the books, but we do have 24 million of them. We have 164 million items on approximately 838 miles of shelves. We have Earth's largest collection of maps, music scores, legal materials, films, sound recordings, comic books, and telephone directories, 124,000 telephone directories. A little bit more detail on some of those. This is an image of our geography and maps stacks. It goes for 2 American football fields. There's 5.5 million of them, and there are so many maps that they are not even cataloged. They're organized in the stacks spatially. So if you want to find a map about France, you go to a certain section of the stacks. And this is a nice illustration that I like to give to people whenever they ask, when are we going to finish scanning? It's hard to imagine scanning all this material. Even just describing it would take an enormous investment. We have the largest recording of recorded sound in the world, on wax cylinders, on vinyl, on lacquer discs, of radio, including tens of thousands of World War II radio broadcasts, of jazz recordings, including Ella Fitzgerald's own artist collection, and original field recordings of American music and folklore. This is one of my favorite pictures in the collection. This is Ella Fitzgerald. It's just, it's wonderful. And I do want to mention that most of the images I'll use in the talk today are from the collections, and I'll post the references online after I talk. There's a no spoilers rule. We have the largest collection of personal papers in the world. The personal papers of members of the United States Legislature alone comprise 900 collections. The papers of 23 U.S. presidents, from George Washington to Calvin Coolidge, and the personal papers of great thinkers and doers, including Frederick Douglass, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Oppenheimer, Alexander Graham Bell, Groucho Marx, and Sigmund Freud. And it's big and it's growing. So about 20,000 tangible items arrive on the loading dock each week. About half of those are added to the collections, which means we add the equivalent of my hometown library to the Library of Congress every week. which is another thing that I like to share with people whenever they ask when we're going to scan all this stuff. So with all of that material, the task becomes, how do you get the champagne out of the bottle, right? So we collect all this material on behalf of Congress and the American people in the world, but how do we encourage use and reuse? And so about a year ago, the library started the labs team. And it was a space to encourage experimentation and to try new things. Oh, I'm one slide behind, aren't I? Okay, this is my incredible labs team behind me. The first three are labs, the second three are crowdsourcing folks. I'll get to that a little bit later. But a big focus of the labs team, in addition to providing and inviting human interface to the collections, is to facilitate experiments throughout the institution. And we have, broadly speaking, 3 different types of experiments. The first is to explore an affordance. So as we think about digital and the ways that we can use it to do new kinds of learning and immersion, how can we test that? How can we test out how that works? How can we show people what is possible? The second is to test a hypothesis. So we don't want to invest a ton of money into building something that no one's going to use or that is impractical for many reasons. So we want to be able to test things out before we put them into production. And the third is to learn how an established idea works in our context. For many of the reasons you heard in the previous section of the talk, we're a singular institution. We're very, very unusual, but so are all of your institutions and all of the institutions in your home or in your home territories. No place is exactly the same as others. So it's always helpful to be able to tease out different ways of working. So in terms of exploring an affordance, we last year, concurrent with releasing labs, we also released the Loc.Gov API. This is an API that you can use to explore the collections computationally. And one of the first things we did in labs was to collect all of the APIs and bulk data sources that allow you to interact computationally with collections. And there are more than you'd think, some for good reasons and others for less good reasons. But we have on the labs.loc.gov page an explanation of what these all are, and also tools that can help you use them, like Jupyter Notebooks or tutorials. We also wanted to invite people to use them. So it's not just enough to put them out there. We think that giving exploratory projects and kind of sparking people's imagination is useful. So this is an image of Laura Rubin. She's a software development librarian at George Washington University. She came with us for a professional sabbatical, and she helped us document the API right after it was released. And as part of that work, she made a number of applications, sort of exploring the API and what you might be able to do with it. And the first app she released as part of that work is this one, a library of colors. And this is also available at labs.loc.gov if you'd like to explore. So she took collections in our image collection.